Hi, and welcome back to the Rooted HomeLife Podcast, where we talk all things cultivating home and chasing adventure. After quite a hiatus, which we're calling the wrap of season 1, and this the start of season 2, I am so excited to chat today with an amazing mom, an amazing author, and just someone that we are all going to be so encouraged by and what she has to share. Jamie Erickson is going to be with me today to talk all about the topic of overwhelm as moms and share with us about her new book, Overwhelmed Mom. So grab yourself a cup of coffee and join me for this conversation with Jamie Erickson. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jamie.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So for those of you that may not know Jamie Erickson, I would be surprised. She has been around sharing all of her homeschool wisdom for so many years now. I actually read her first book, Homeschool Bravely, was one of my first ever homeschool books that I read at the very beginning of my homeschool journey. I've read her second book that I'm going to let her pronounce. And then I am currently actually reading her book that she's going to share with us more about today and what's on her heart in relation to that topic. But I want to let her introduce herself and just tell us a little bit more about her in case you don't know her or much about her.
Well, first of all, kudos to you, Christina, for deferring to the guest about saying that word. It's Huga. I get that a lot, so you're not the only one. I am Jamie Erickson. I'm the mother of 5. I've been homeschooling for the last 18 years. I was a teacher in the classroom prior to that, and I will say, although I'm not a huge proponent that everybody should homeschool, I will say that teaching in the classroom kind of ruined me for anything but homeschooling. And my husband and I have launched 2 of our kids. We still have a senior, a junior, and an 8th grader at home. And I also should add that we're second generation homeschoolers because my husband was homeschooled way back in the late 80s, early 90s, and things have come a long way since then.
Wow. Yeah. So I also have 5. So that's really exciting. We are not second generation homeschoolers, though. We are first. So we have some things in common. I do have some teens. So your book right now is right on time for me, which I'm sure is the case for many moms who have either already picked it up or will pick it up after hearing you talk about this topic, because I don't know a mom that doesn't feel overwhelmed in some way. I just saw something on social media the other day, and I forget who posted it, but they were basically sharing about how their older teens that they have now, which are the youngest of their 5 or 6 or however many they are, they've really spent time staying up late at night with them and really soaking in that time because that's when the teens want to spend time with them. And they're like, so regret that we didn't do this with our older children, but we also had younger children. So we were getting up early and we were too tired and we just didn't have the margin for it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness, I so relate to this because I'm in the stage that she's talking about she was in previously, where I have older kids and I have younger kids. And so I do often feel like I'm trying to, where's the balance? Who do I give attention to? Like who needs
Yeah.
the most? And all of those things. So I think that's what's been so helpful to me so far about reading your book is knowing like, wow, I'm not completely crazy. I'm not alone. Like some of these feelings are super normal. But then I love how you bring the balance of, okay, but it's not just to vent about it, to have people be like, yeah, me too, this is hard, but like, how can we not be overwhelmed? So I guess my first question to you would be like, what spurred this idea in you or, this drive in you to create this book, to write this book, Overwhelmed Mom? Like, it's very clear and to the point, right? Like, overwhelmed mom, it's calling out to you.
Yeah. Well, I first want to point out that it's overwhelmed not mom and not the overwhelmed mom. And that was very intentional because I didn't want a mom who picked up this book to feel like her identity was in her overwhelm. You're not the overwhelmed mom. You're just overwhelmed right now. You're living in an acute season, perhaps, of overwhelm. And I'd actually argue that because of the fall, Jesus said, I think it was in John, in this world you will have trouble. So overwhelm kind of is part and parcel. It's sort of the universal theme of being a human being, a person with flesh. So it is overwhelmed mom. And I'll say part of the impetus for that is God has never given me a message that he wants me to give that he also doesn't want me to live. I have been through some very acute seasons throughout my entire adult life where I was overwhelmed. And then in addition, I had the privilege, like you, Christina, to be going to some homeschool conferences over the last, 10, 12 years. And while I'm speaking at those, I often hear from moms who spin lots of plates. They're the homeschool mom. They're maybe working outside the home, maybe working in the home. They have multiple children. They volunteer in ministry capacities. They have an income producing job. They wear a lot of hats. And any conversation I have with a mom, there might be questions, there might be threads of conversation, but there is a through line through almost every single conversation I've ever had with any mom at a conference. And it's, I'm drowning. Help. I need a life vest. I can't keep doing this. Give me the surefire solution to iron out whatever feels bent or broken in my life. And I felt that deeply through certain seasons of my life. Now, a lot of people would look at me and think that I'm a type A person because I think my life typically looks pretty organized and put together. I'm not that. I'm not a type A by nature. It's been nurtured into me by circumstances. And so that's what I really wanted moms to see when they picked up this book is even if you are not a type A, even if organization, systems, uh, control doesn't come naturally to you, that there are some handholds that you can put in place in your life to sort of get some element of control in the things that are controllable so that when you are in an acute season of overwhelm, like often happens to most of us, you can tackle those overwhelming things with more clarity, more vision, more purpose, because all the other mundane bits of your life are sort of operating at a nice clip.
Yeah. So it had me thinking a bit of like, what is the knee-jerk reaction, right? Of like every mom who hears like, don't be overwhelmed, or there's a book telling you not to be overwhelmed,
Yeah.
right? It's just, well, that's easy to say if I didn't have this whole list of things on my plate or this major thing going on. Or, yeah, that mom may be able to not be overwhelmed. Like, it must be nice to be her. But you talk about in the book, like, overwhelm being a choice. Could you talk
Mm.
a little bit about what you mean by that?
Well, I first want to address what you initially said, how you can look at maybe a mom who's like, well, I don't know why you're not overwhelmed, but that would be overwhelming to me, or vice versa. Like, of course you're not overwhelmed. Look at your life. I
Mhm.
think that God has given us all different types of capacities. And we do need to acknowledge that a bit. Like, I operate probably, if I'm being honest, at a higher capacity than, say, a friend of mine. And so I actually do operate better when I have many moving parts. If I'm just sitting at the wall staring and watching paint dry, I get real itchy and squirrely. My daughter, on the other hand, and she's a full-grown woman with her own life, her own business, or her own job, she's going to college. She will readily admit, Mom, I don't have the same capacity as you. And this is for a whole other conversation, but that was a conversation that I had to have with her. And I'm only sharing with you to know, for you to know, and your listeners to know that you might be, rubbing shoulders, shoulder to shoulder with other women who have a different amount of capacity than you. And that's okay to acknowledge that. So just because maybe you only have a few things on your plate and that feels very draining and very overwhelming, that feeling is still just as real
Mhm.
when you're looking at, even though you're not that other woman who maybe has 8 times the amount of things that she's balancing. And that's okay because God has given us, different amounts of capacity. To your original question, like, is overwhelmed a choice? I think to some extent it is. If you look at the verse in scripture, it's found in First Thessalonians chapter 4, 11 through 12. If you don't mind, I'll just read it so that I don't misquote it. It goes like this. And to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, you should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders and so that you will not be dependent on anybody. So if we look at the aim or the end goal of that verse, to live a quiet life, I mean, who doesn't want that? Right? If that's your aim to live, and actually that quiet life is referring to like peace and rest. That's really what that phrase means. If you want a life that is peaceful and restful, here's what you got to do. And Paul in those verses gives us like the twofold prescription for that. It's to mind your own business and work with your hands. And if we're being really honest, sometimes our overwhelm comes because we're not doing one or maybe both of those things. We're not minding our own business and we're not working with our hands. I actually think there's 3 different types of overwhelm that we experience. And when we don't recognize the differences between those 3 types of overwhelm, sometimes we add to our overwhelm.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about maybe the 3 different types?
Sure, yeah. So when you look at that, I want you to just look at that phrase, mind your own business. And when we hear that in our American Western culture, we usually hear it with like a degree of snark, like, well, mind your own business. I mean, that's usually how I want to deliver it, at least, or how I hear it. But if you look at it sort of differently and know that Paul wasn't actually adding that snark, when you read it that way, that's you adding to it. He was just exhorting in love people to mind their own business. Now, when I read that phrase, I can read it one of 3 ways. I can read it this way: mind your own business, with the emphasis on mind, meaning there are certain things in my life that God has called me to mind. My bed needs to be made. The bed fairy is not going to come in here and do it for me. The dishes in the sink, that's my business to mind, or at least mine to delegate to someone. The laundry, the care and keeping of my children. There are certain things that are mine to mind. And when I grow apathetic in my job of doing that, when I grow, dare I say it, lazy, and I do a bunch of other things because I don't want to do that thing, the cares of today then get compiled with the cares of tomorrow, and your overwhelm grows, you know? So that's one over piece of overwhelm that we sometimes feel, is when we're not minding our own business. Then when I look at that phrase with a slightly different inflection and I read it this way, mind your own business, that's a good reminder to me of a second type of overwhelm. And that's the type of overwhelm that we feel when we are looking outside of what God has given us to mind, and we're looking at the business of others. Like I see you, Christine, on Instagram doing this one thing. Maybe it's taking your kids to ice skating lessons. And I think, oh, well, maybe I should be taking my kids to ice skating lessons. Or, your kid is in the backyard learning how to whittle. Well, I guess we should be whittling. And I continue to add and add things to my plate that maybe are good things. They're just not my good things to do. Well, no wonder I'm so overwhelmed, because I have the capacity of one person. I don't have the capacity of the whole internet that I see. And sometimes I think we look on social media and we see what all these women, other people are doing. And in our minds, we make a composite woman in our mind. Like it's one person doing all those things instead of like 1,000 people doing all those things, right? So that's another form of overwhelm, when we're not minding our business. We're minding everybody else's business. And it's almost like we're living 1,000 different lives. Right. And then the third type of overwhelm comes, or I'm reminded of the third type of overwhelm when I read that phrase, mind your own business, with the emphasis on the word own. And that's a good reminder to me that there are some things in life, some forms of overwhelm, that I will never be able to mind. They are actually only God's to mind. There are certain things in this world that no matter how much I spin my wheels, no matter how much control I think I can garner, I will never be able to mind. When my house burns down, when my husband loses his job, when my child becomes ill with a debilitating disease, when my parent dies, none of those things are in my capacity to change or fix. And yet as women, we can sometimes do all we can do to try to change or fix them. No wonder we feel so overwhelmed.
Wow. That's so good. I feel like as you're sharing these different types of overwhelm, that it could be helpful then maybe for a mom if she's feeling super overwhelmed to try to identify like which
Yeah.
kind of overwhelmed am I feeling? Is it one? Is it two of them? Is it maybe like a little bit of all three? And that's why I feel like a bundle of anxiety all of the time. I was actually reminded of what I read with my 14-year-old earlier. It's so funny. It really connects with the first one that you said. We're reading the book Created for Work. It's
Sure.
kind of an
Yeah.
older
It's
one.
a
I
good
don't
one.
agree with it. Yes. And it's for young men or young boys, right? But every time
Bob
I read it,
Schultz, I think, is the author of that one.
yes,
Bob Schultz.
yes.
Yeah.
Actually, it's right here. It's funny because I still haven't cleaned up all of our homeschool stuff. But today it was about overwhelm and discouragement. I think it used the word discouragement more, but it talks so much about how like discouragement can lead you to like not do the things that you need to do. But then
Hmm.
it's such a vicious cycle because then you're still left with the things and then more things have piled up.
Yeah.
And it was basically saying, like, just do the things discouraged.
Yeah.
Like, just mind your own business. Like,
Hmm.
even if you're feeling overwhelmed or discouraged, like, just start to pick away at it because you'll actually feel less overwhelmed once you start to see some of the things done. I feel like
Right.
that really connects to that first type of overwhelmed that you were talking or speaking to. And then the second one, the composite woman thing, I am going to keep that in my brain because I know that I can be guilty of that, right? Like, because there's some moms that are super crafty and that's what they're
Hmm.
great at. And that's like, it fills them up. It doesn't stress them.
Hmm.
Like, it brings them
It's
joy.
a
Right?
life-giving. Yeah.
Right. And then there's like the baking mom or there's the adventure mom. And we can be multiple of these things, but we definitely can't be like all of them.
Hmm.
I feel
Yeah.
like that's one.
Yeah. And I'd add to that and say, remember that the mother on social media is showing what she is doing. She's not actually showing you what she's not doing. And so some
Mhm.
of the things that you might be doing at your house are things she actually doesn't do, but you wouldn't know that because she's not showing you, oh, I'm not the baking mom, when maybe you are. And all of those commitments or those yeses will take a certain level of commitment and time and energy. And so, yeah, we look at social media and we add up all of those people and give her one face.
That's so good. And even the third one, I mean, obviously the third one, right, is that reminder that there are things that are outside my control and they're not things I can mind. And they're not things that I can maybe not even just not pay attention to because they are things that affect me and my family and are very real. But realizing like it's not really something I can do anything about other than trusting that God can, you know? So I think all three of those are it's super helpful that you've identified those in a way that moms can say, okay, like, where do I even start to sort through these feelings of overwhelm that I'm having?
And I actually think in identifying those three, and you recognize, okay, this first pile, I have to actually work with my hands, that second piece of Paul's directive. This second pile, I have to just dismiss and let go, like shake off that's not for me. That when the third pile does happen to you will be able to give it much more of your attention, your energy, your emotion, and not feel so overwhelmed by that third pile because this first pile is already being taken care of. You've set up some good systems, some procedures, some rhythms that it's almost like on autopilot to some extent because life is going to happen. Your trouble is synonymous with this world. It's universal. So you almost have to anticipate it by taking care of the things that you can take care of in order that those other things do not send waves of overwhelm into your
Yeah, like
life.
using your energy for the things you do need to mind,
Right.
not wasting it for the things that are not yours, not your
Yeah.
thing. And then you're not stretched so thin
Right.
that when the big things do dump on you that you can't really control, like you have
Yeah.
some bandwidth to still hold it
Hmm.
together with God's help, obviously,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So you mentioned that current culture celebrates two different types of moms. And can you talk a little bit about like who they are and how that compares to the kind of mom that scripture actually calls us to be as moms?
I think there's two, like you said. One, I think culture really champions the mom boss, for lack of a better way to say that. You know, the ones who are go-getters, they're the try-harders, the alpha moms who want to do all the things and then launch a five-part course about it on Instagram by lunch, right? Those are the mom bosses. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I think society really champions the mombies, the hot mess moms that sit in the closet with their wine because it's wine o'clock somewhere, that go onto social media and word vomit all their vitriol about their life and their kids, and they're a victim of their children, a victim of their husbands. Their family is robbing them of purpose. Those are the two spectrums, the two faces of motherhood that the culture wants to give us. And I think they're both overwhelming in their own way. And they both add to our overwhelm in their own way. I think God, however, has us somewhere right in the middle. And I know that sounds cliche, but I really think that there is a happy medium, a happy middle place when we are looking to scripture to find our identity and to find our purpose and our value.
So how do moms find that middle place? Like if they're like, yeah, that sounds really good, but how do I actually do that? Like how do I find myself not in a place where I am like overly productive or over focused on productivity and success and approval and all of those things, but not where I'm maybe seeing everything as drudgery or becoming lazy because I feel like, well, I have too much on my plate anyway. How do they
Yeah.
find that middle ground or that balanced place that God really has for us?
Well, and I think everybody's looking for that silver bullet solution, right? I am sad to say that there isn't one, but I don't think that's the end of the story. I think there are some things that we can consider and some good rhythms and routines we can put in place. First and foremost, I think it really does matter what you say about your life. How you talk about your life and your overwhelm is important. Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." And research actually shows how you narrate your life, what you say about your life, you step into. So
Mhm.
if you're the mom who goes to co-op and, the first thing out of your mouth is, "Oh my word, it was such a morning to get out the door. I am such a hot mess." It might have been a morning to get out the door, but saying that you're a hot mess, you're actually forecasting the doom of the rest of your day. And that's can be backed up by science. You
Mhm.
are forecasting doom every time you say that about yourself. So start changing the narrative first and foremost. That's not to say that you cannot call a spade a spade. Like if life is hard, it's okay to say that, but I think it really matters how, when, and why we're saying it. I think sometimes we send out those messages to our community, our family, our friends for attention,
Mhm.
for empathy, for sympathy. And we're really not looking for actual practical hands and feet care. We're just wanting to complain about our life and be affirmed in that complaint.
Mhm.
We're looking for allies to complain with us. We're not looking for women who will exhort us, help us, pray for us, pray with us, call us to do better, to love better, to serve better. We're just word vomiting. So that is the very first thing. Your life might be hard, but gather a community of women that you can bounce that difficulty off of, and you're taking on her cares and she's taking on yours, and you're actually doing something about it. You're not just complaining about it. So that's first and foremost, I think. And then maybe the second step is to audit and edit your life wherever appropriate. And that takes some personal reflection, that takes some assessment of your life, like actually sitting down and saying, what are the most painful points of my days? And let me look at those and see if I can come up with a successful solution for that one pain point right now. Because here's the thing, you're not going to be able to overhaul your whole life in one day, but you probably can overhaul one thing, like that pile of shoes that piles up right by your door and you constantly trip over it every time you come in. Well, that's just adding to your irritation, right? And
Mhm.
your overwhelm and your what happens when you walk through the door and you're like tripping over your shoes? What happens to your emotions? What happens to your energy? And then where do all those emotions get directed to or pointed at?
The owners of all the shoes.
The owners of all the shoes, or your children who may or may not have put the shoes there, your husband who probably doesn't even know the shoes are in the front entry. You all of that energy gets directed at the people closest to you, whether it's their fault or not, you know. And and so if you can just remember that you're not going to be able to overhaul your whole life, but you can audit and edit maybe one thing today. And then if you get that one thing, that one little pain point kind of under control, you'll have then time and energy tomorrow to do another pain point because you're not focusing on the first one. You're not tripping over your shoes anymore. So, what can you direct your attention to today? And slowly over time, you will dig your way out of your overwhelm and be proactively preparing for the next season of acute overwhelm that is sure to come because in this world you will have trouble. But if you can slowly start to build up some good systems and some good routines in your day to put all those mundane bits on autopilot, you'll be more prepared for the overwhelm that's sure to come. So audit and edit your life. A good way to do that is to ask yourself, what do I need to do today? What can I dismiss? Because again, our three types of overwhelm. What can I do? What do I need to dismiss? And then what can I delegate? I mean, if you have little kids at home, no matter how little, even if they're toddlers, I bet they could do something. You know, if you're bringing in all the groceries, I remember when my kids were little and I had 5 under 8, and I live in the near tundra, so it gets dark real fast in the winter, and it's biting temperatures, like negative temps for much of the year. So every time I had to go to the grocery store, that was a pain point to me to bring all 5 kids. My husband worked crazy wonky hours. It's freezing. We're dressed up like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So even just to get us all dressed up to go out to the grocery store was Herculean. And then to carry in all those groceries until one day I decided, you know what, toddler, you can carry this tiny little bag and toddle your way inside. And 8-year-old, here's a bag and come back for another one when you're done with this one. And so, like, what can I delegate? I think so much of our overwhelm as moms is that we take on the things that our kids can actually take on. We're fearful to let them do it because we know they're not going to do it exactly like we would in the same amount of time, as efficiently or as well. We also, if we're being honest, are a little lazy and we don't always want to take the time that is required to teach and train and then inspect what we expect. So
Yeah.
that's another way we add to our own overwhelm by not giving our children agency
Mhm.
to do the things that are theirs to do. We just do it for them. So those are a couple of ways. Again, you're not going to overhaul your whole life today, but you can make incremental changes that will eventually add up to a really big change.
It's so true. I can attest to this because this is currently the season that I am in where I decided that, okay, I'm just going to start tackling stuff. Like if it means that I don't get to one of the things that I would normally do each day, because that's where I would find myself where I can't do those extra tasks or clean those things that aren't part of like my regular,
Mm-hmm.
not because I have so much regular stuff to do, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm just picking one a day and I'm doing it. Like
Yeah.
the random, like cleaning out the drawer under my oven, right? Like that thing just doesn't get cleaned out. And like
That's right.
every
There's
time
no
I
drawer
open it,
fairy come into your house to wipe that
right,
down. You are the
right.
drawer fairy.
Yeah. And every time I open it, I'm annoyed and oh, it looks gross. And then in the back of my head, I'm like, I've got to get to that. And so now I really honestly just started when I think of it, I'm like, I'm just going to do it right now. Like I've been looking at these kitchen windows and kitchen screens looking dirty and it drives me crazy. And I'm like, I'm just going to do it right now. And then I realized like that actually only took 10 minutes. Like
Yes.
that thing that I've been pushing off for months and months, and there is a long list of them, like lots of them only take like 10 minutes. And it's
Yeah.
pretty crazy when you
That's
say
another
that.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt. That's another thing that science shows us that we forecast doom thinking about the time and the energy that a task will take us. So we put it off thinking that tomorrow it'll take us less time. The logic of that is irrational, but that's what we say to ourselves that tomorrow I'll have more time, I'll have more energy. And so we forecast something and doom ourselves from the get-go. If instead we just did the thing, we'd find, oh, that only took me 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I do have several suggestions in my book for those type of tasks where it's like, wow, if I sat down and thought about like, when was the last time I washed my drapes? When was the last time I cleaned out the oven drawer? And all those tasks that are not necessarily urgent, but probably still need to get done. I do have some systems put in place that I have used over the years that have been helpful that I do put in the book there because we're all different. We all prefer to schedule our lives in different ways. There's no one right way. And I would say if the other thing I would add, actually, as you were telling me your story about your oven drawer, I was sitting there thinking, when is the last time I cleaned out my oven drawer? One thing that we do need to recognize is everybody will have a different mindset when it comes to yeses and nos. And maybe a better way to say that would be things that matter to you might not matter to me, and that's okay. I don't know when the last time I cleaned out my drawer was. I know that the last time I did clean it out was because of necessity. Something got in there and we had to clean it out. But I'm sitting here thinking, you know what? I never opened that drawer. I don't really even care if it's clean. I can let that go. Maybe someday I'll get to it, but I don't have to let the pressure of the fact that Christina has cleaned hers out force me to think I have to clean mine out because it doesn't matter to me. And I think it goes back to that bucket number 2 of overwhelm. Like I'm sitting here listening to you. Oh, I guess I should probably clean out that drawer. Nope, because it doesn't matter to me. But kudos to you that it does. And I can champion you without feeling guilty for not feeling like it matters.
Yeah, that's such a good point because even just like floors, right? Like some people have a way different threshold than others about like how clean do my floors need to be? How often do they need to be washed? Like for all of the things, right? Like so how much dirty laundry is acceptable to be there at once versus not? How much laundry that is clean that needs to be dealt with is acceptable or whatever it is. So I think that's a really good point because where like laundry might not drive me crazy, it might stress you out. And so that's a priority to you because your piece will come from like that area being minded, I guess, right? So that's a really good point too.
I'd also kick back to you, Christina, in those areas, this is a question for you. In those areas where, like laundry or cleaning out the oven drawer, have you noticed that over time, or maybe a better way to say that would be with every child that you've had, some of those things that you found so acutely important suddenly become less so?
Yes.
Yes. And that's exactly how you should feel. And if we could only apply that to other areas of our life, because here's the thing, here's our capacity. When I add a really big responsibility to my capacity, you can't just add something into a space without taking something out of a space. Like that is just the laws of physics, right? And so when you added another baby to your home, suddenly things like laundry or cleaning out the oven drawer became less important than they were before. And you had to maybe set it over here for a time, right? And that's okay to do. But if my point is, if we could just look at that in other areas of our responsibilities, not just adding another child to the mix, but the moment you add any large responsibility, any new thing to your capacity, something has to be taken out. And I think that's another area where women get into trouble. They just keep adding and adding, forgetting that, oh, actually, it's not physically possible to do 56 hours worth of work in a 24-hour period. So every yes you give you also have to then say a no to something else, especially if you're to the point where right now I feel pretty overwhelmed, or right now I feel like I'm doing well, but one more yes will be the tipping point.
Mm.
So every yes you give, remember to give a generous but polite no to something else.
That's such a good point because we want to, like, I think for a lot of us moms, like, we want to be everything to everyone. We want to be making sure that everyone feels like loved and nurtured and cared for, even if it's not our immediate family. Like, even
Yeah.
if it's, a friend or serving at church or someone that's in like our homeschool group or whatever it is. We're like, of course we want to, like, we have the desire, maybe
Mhm.
some things you don't, but a lot of the good things, we're like, we have just the desire to be that woman, that mom, that person that is available and wants to help and all of those things. So I feel like that's a really good reminder that even if it's a good thing, we might not have the capacity for that good
Mhm.
thing unless we are able to make space for it by taking something else out.
Right.
It's really
And to
good.
remind yourself that all of those, women are rarely asked to do bad things. Most of the things that we're asked to do are good things. Nobody's asking us to rob a bank, right? Hey,
Right.
will you serve in children's church at during Sunday school? Will you sell these cookies at the bake sale for the sports fundraiser? These are all good things. Doesn't necessarily mean it's your good thing to do. And a good litmus test when you are confronted with a good thing is to say, okay, if I give a yes to this, what am I willing to give a no to? Because I'm going to give a no to something. That's just the laws of physics. Whether I give it intentionally or inadvertently, a no will be given. If I give a yes to this person, am I okay giving a no to a different person? My husband, my children. So every yes and no you get, every yes you give will be a no to something else. That's just a really good litmus test. Before you give a yes to something, recognize the hidden cost of your yes, the no that you're giving to something else.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I'm definitely going to keep that one in the back of my mind because when you make, like, I feel like we know this, right? Like we know it, but we don't consciously think of it when we're faced with those things.
Mm-hmm.
And later we know that we're gonna reap that, like you said, it's not a choice. It's going to happen. Like something is going to be a no. And if we haven't thought it through, and if we haven't actually made the conscious decision of like, yes, I'm okay with this or comfortable with this, or feel like this is the right choice, then we usually end up frustrated or resentful,
Mm-hmm.
anyway. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's really helpful. Okay, there was a couple more things that I wanted to ask you. Okay, living in their season. Can you talk about mothers living in their season? I feel like you've sort of touched on that in remembering that, like, if you're in a season of toddlerhood or you have a new baby, right? Like that's probably your season. But do you want to talk a little bit more about like how you would encourage a mom that is feeling super overwhelmed and comes to you and you feel like what she really would benefit from is understanding her season and being in that, like what might that look like for her?
And I think you touched on this a little bit at the very start of our conversation about, having teenagers now and living in the tension of, they want to stay up super late and chat with you because that's usually when teens begin to open up, while
Mhm.
also having young kids that want you to get up early. And so you are in that sort of transitional season. I'm probably a couple clicks over in my season in that I only have teens and young adults. I think part of our overwhelm as moms comes when we are not living in our season and not recognizing that a season is like a boundary.
Mhm.
I think it's in Psalms where scripture talks about, you have laid the boundary lines for me in pleasant
Mhm.
places. And the word boundary in that psalm is indicative of the same kind of boundaries that you see in the Torah when God was dividing the lot lines for the people of Israel and saying, like, tribe of Gad, you get this spot over here. Tribe of, you know, Judah, you get this spot over here. Benjamin, you're over here, what have you. Those are the same words, boundaries, and then the lot lines. So when we're thinking about boundaries of our lives or seasons of our lives, it's kind of like that. God is saying, this is where I want you to be. And I'm actually going to put a boundary here. I'm putting a boundary on your time. I'm putting a boundary on your capacity. I'm putting a boundary on your energy because I'm not trying to hem you in. I don't want you to, he's not trying to make us feel constricted in that boundary. He's trying to keep all the cares of the world out.
Mm.
So when he gave Gad that lot line, he was saying, this is where you're to live, and everybody else stay out because this is Gad's right here to take care of and to watch care over. And I think sometimes as moms, we look at the seasons that other women are in. Like when I was a mom of young children, I looked to the moms with teens. Oh, they don't have to buckle in 5 car seats. Like there was a season I had 5 car seats to buckle. They don't have to do that. They don't have to change 3 babies' diapers at once. Like, won't it be lovely and dreamy when I can go on a date with my husband and not have to get childcare? And we look to the what we see the perceived beauty of over there
Mm.
on the other side of the boundary that God has given us. And we become overwhelmed because we don't value what is right in front of us. We want to add what's over there too. And on the flip side, when you're in a season like I'm in, where you have teens and well, I don't even have tweens anymore. I have teens and adults. And they don't need me in such relentless ways like they did in the early years. I'm not in the mom heavy years anymore. I could look back to the season I came from with starry eyes, thinking about, oh, do you remember when like a band-aid was the cure-all fix to all their pain and their heartache? Remember when a snack could just, change the course of a day? Remember when they liked to snuggle with me on my lap? And look backward to that other season wanting to be there instead of looking right here where God has put me. And I really think that that's a tool of the enemy. Satan wants you to put your eyes on the 2 places of your life that you cannot change: the past and the future. I can do
Wow.
nothing about the past. I really can't do much about the future because God has me right here, right now. This is the boundary line that He's put in front of me. And so I am to mother in the current season I'm in, not the season I wish I was in. And I think sometimes we get into trouble when we borrow the cares, even the blessings of a season that we're not currently in.
That's so good. I've never really thought about a season as having like these boundary lines to it. So I feel like that's really helpful. I definitely find myself probably guilty of all of them, but the one that I think is most common for me is just not even wanting to get to the next season, but like wanting to know what it is.
Sure.
Right. So I'm like, God, I don't feel like I have clear direction or clear vision for like the next season. And I'm speaking to like just the very recent past, kind of where I was and where God is bringing me now, that this is just so perfect for me. And I know I'm not the only mom that this is going to be so perfect for, but really just, okay, but like what's next, or what do you want me to do? And I just really felt like the Lord was saying, like, just this.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing to prepare for right now. And I think that in some seasons there are, right? Like I'm sure he is preparing me. And there are things that I'm preparing that I just don't know about. And just being able to rest in that and like being that season. And I feel like that visual is just like such a helpful thing. Like I have you in this place, and it's not about like holding you back from things, but maybe it's more about like holding other things back from like your guarded place and your guarded
Right.
season and boundary line. So that's just so good. Thank you for that.
To be
I,
right where your feet are and to have your eyes set on what God has put right in front of you. And I think where that matters is like when you have a young mom who has all these wonderful dreams and aspirations. I want to lead that Sunday school class, or I want to start a podcast, and none of those things are bad. And maybe she does have the capacity for those things, but I think more often than not, it's when I was a young mom, I looked at all those things that I wanted to do and felt like if I didn't do them right now, the opportunity would just pass me by. And so I better do them right now. But God had me with little children who needed that mom heavy care. And if I was giving all my energy, all my capacity to these things out here, I would have very little to give to the people right in front of me. And now on the flip side, when I have teens and adults, I have to be mindful of the amount of control that I think I can have with my children and their lives and orchestrating it just so. I used to be able to maybe do that a little bit when they were little because I was the keeper of the clock. I was the tone setter and the magic maker. But now I'm not. And to be able to say, okay, I don't really like the choice that they made. It's not a simple choice, but it's probably not a choice I would make, but it's okay. They're an adult. I can champion them in that and cheer them on and be a safe harbor that they can come back to if need be.
Wow. Yeah, that's so good because I'm starting to do that just the first time. Like my oldest is 17. And while he's still technically not an adult, he really is living more of a young adult life. He's going to be
Sure.
18 in actually exactly a month. But he was young, right? So like he graduated at 17 and he's working full time and he's obviously driving and doing all these things. And I'm like, whew, like, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
What is my place? Like, what is the appropriate place? And that's just something I'm continuously praying over. So I'm like, can we hang out? Because I need your help. Um, but I do want to ask you two final things, if that's okay. I'm going to shoot them
Yeah.
at the same time. The first is like, if there's one last thing on your heart that you want to leave moms with. And then the other one is just, I know they're going to want more. So what is the best place for them to find you, connect with you, get more of the wisdom that you have to share, get your book, all the things?
Yeah. Well, I guess my parting thought would be to just remind moms that overwhelm is often a symptom of misaligned priorities.
Mm,
And so if we can remember that as women, we might be able to care about a lot of things, but we cannot do very many things with great care. And
mm,
so we get to decide. That's the beauty of it. I get to decide every yes and every no that I give. And so I do want to be a good steward of what God has given me, and stewardship should compel me to do something, but my surrender to God and my acknowledgement that I am not God, I am not all, I cannot be all and do all, my surrender should constrain me from doing only the things that I can do. So
mm.
it's a both and. It's stewardship, but also surrender. And if you want to grab my book or learn more about the things that I'm doing, you can check me out at jamieerickson.com. And that's probably the easiest way to find my podcast and my books and my blog and all the things.
Wonderful. And I will link all of that in the show notes so that they can find you easily. Thank you so much, Jamie, for this book and also just for this time to share with me and so many other moms that are going to be blessed by you tackling this topic that we all face in one way or the other.
It was such a delight to chat with you. Thank you so much for having me, Christina.
Thank you so much for joining me today on the Rooted Home Life Podcast. I hope that you have an opportunity to grab Jamie's book and follow her and her website and her podcast and all of the things that she has to share with us, her wisdom and experiences as a mom. Everything that you need to know to get in touch with Jamie is down in the show notes below. And I hope you'll join us for the next episode of the Rooted Home Life Podcast. Until next time, stay rooted.